Getting your cape is one of the proudest moments of any Helldiver's career. Not only does it mean that you have successfully passed your training, but it also means now you are ready to dive into battle, fighting Liberty's enemies and defending our managed democracy. But while General Brash's training course is great at giving you the basics, there are so much more things that are important to know in order to make you one of Super Earth's finest. Dr. Puplov here, and I have been playing Helldivers 2 since it launched, and I have unfortunately learned a lot of these things the hard way. But today I want to share with you over 100 things that I wish I knew sooner in Helldivers 2. In this video, we're going to cover the game economy, leveling up, as well as combat, but later we're also going to cover some of the more advanced techniques that even Helldiver veterans might not know. But first, let's start with your settings. Under your gameplay settings, be sure to utilize Remember Aim mode, specifically per weapon, which allows you to remember how you prefer to use each gun. With first and third person perspectives available in this game, it's nice to be able to snap immediately to what you prefer rather than needing to toggle it every time. Similarly, the Remember Weapon function lets you remember how you like to utilize each weapon, whether it be a scope, a fire pattern, or a flashlight setting. Which reminds me, always be sure to check what weapon functions you have by holding down the reload button. This will allow you to see some of your weapon functions, but it will also let you see how many bullets you have. Some weapons can even be modified in game, like the machine guns, the stalwart, and the tenderizer, which have different RPM speeds that you can change. You also have weapons like the autocannon and the recoilless rifle, which both have a high damage mode and a splash mode. And you even have the VG70 variable, which goes a little bit crazy with how many options it gives you. One thing to note though is some of these settings are not remembered even when you have the Remember Weapon function toggled, so just be sure to check that you have it set it right if you happen to die and need to dive back in with a fresh weapon. Now you also have a setting called Auto Climb, which I recommend turning off. This can be nice at times so you don't have to press any buttons to climb rocky terrain, but it also leaves you often auto climbing when you don't intend to, especially when you end up near a supply box. I just prefer to not have that happen. Another helpful setting under the HUD is to set reticle visibility to visible. This allows you to line up your reticle and pre-aim your shots prior to aiming down sights. One thing to note is despite having this dot in the center of your reticle, your bullet is actually going to land where the circle is. This is to try to bake in some realism from drag, ergonomics, and recoil. So just be aware that you need that circle to be where you are trying to aim before you fire your shots. Under accessibility settings, you also have the ability to turn on auto reverse vehicles. And what this does is it allows you to quickly go in reverse rather than have to manually toggle to it. Can make driving a lot easier. Also, be sure to check your key or controller bindings because this will tip you off to some of the things that you can actually do. For instance, I didn't know until I checked here that you could actually shoulder swap in this game. Just look for switch camera side to find out where it is. It can be really helpful when utilizing cover in this game. Another thing I found in the bindings is you can quick toss your throwables. Rather than equipping it first and then throwing it, you can just toss it right away. Now let's talk a little bit about the economy and leveling up your character in this game. Super credits, the purchasable currency used to buy war bonds and superstore items, can actually be acquired without spending real money. You can actually find these while you're in a mission, usually at various places of interest, like these small crashed spaceships that have lights emitting from them to tell you where they are, or inside some of the bunkers. You can actually farm these too so that you can technically purchase war bonds without spending any real money. Basically, what a lot of people do is they run around on low-level missions trying to get from point of interest to point of interest as quickly as they can, gathering super credits along the way. Now you have your medals, which are very important because they allow you to purchase items that are within a war bond. And it's important to know that these are earned whether you actually extract or not. All you have to do is complete the mission in order to achieve these. It's a little nefarious to think about, but all Super Earth really cares about is you completing the mission, and not so much whether you get off the planet alive. These medals also do scale up based on the difficulty you're playing at, as well as how deep you are into an operation. You also can earn them from personal orders and major orders. Now, back to war bonds, I actually think that there are two that are best to start with. You have the Helldivers Mobilized War Bond, which is the free one that you get automatically, and inside this are a lot of pages with a lot of good items that are very solid, including at the end the Scorcher, which I definitely think is worth the grind. Now, the premium war bond that I often recommend first is the Democratic Detonation War Bond, which has a ton of explosive weapons, and explosive weapons are arguably the strongest weapon type in this game because not only do they do a lot of damage, but they do stagger as well as splash damage to hurt multiple enemies at a time, and they're also really good for utility on the planets, being able to close bug holes, bot fabricators, and illuminate spaceships. Not to mention, this warbond also has the Thermite Grenade, which is arguably the best throwable in the entire game. Now, one thing to know about samples, which are used to upgrade your spaceships or support DSS efforts, are that you must take them with you. You have to extract with them in order to keep them. If you die and you had samples on you, you can actually find them by looking on the map. You'll see this little sample beaker, and actually the more that beaker looks filled up, the more samples were on that body. So you may want to do a little cost-benefit analysis. If you see a beaker that has a lot of them, it may be worth going back through enemy lines to pick it up. Another smart thing to do is dropping your samples off at extraction points if it happens to be along the way of completing a mission. That allows you to pick it up later and not worry so much about dying and losing all of them. The least plentiful sample is the super samples, and they're only found on levels 6 and above, and you can find them by these rocks that look like a giant poop. That's where you're going to find them, although in the cities you will find them by Helldivers statues. One thing you're actually going to find probably is that super samples are actually one of the easiest to end up accumulating, as you don't need to spend that many for a lot of the ship upgrades. Often it is commons and rares that are your bottleneck towards your next unlock. Now, commons and rares are found at various POIs, and if you want to know that you've collected them all, you can actually look at the map icon. If there's a diamond symbol, it means that there are collectibles there, and if that closes with whatever this symbol is, it means you've collected all there is to collect in that area. If you are on level 10 Super Hell Dive and you find an egg in a Terminid Mega Nest or a skull in an Automaton Fortress, these can actually be carried, and if you extract with these, you will get a few additional rare samples and super samples for your team. All samples, medals, and super credits are shared, by the way, if you earn them in a mission, so you don't need to fight your teammates for them. Now, your primary weapons actually have levels, and leveling up these weapons allows you to purchase weapon mods as well as skins that can change various aspects of the gun's functionality. Now, leveling up these weapons actually is done the same way as when you level up your character, so it actually doesn't even matter if you use your primary or not. As long as you're getting XP in a mission, that's going to be able to level that up. One quick mod you can do prior to leveling up most of your guns is actually to remove the flashlight or laser and go with no underbarrel. The flashlight honestly hurts visibility a lot of the time, and doing this is actually going to give you a small boost to your ergonomics, which is how fast you can drag your weapon to your target, so it's good to have that. A general rule that I find for modding your primary is to apply anything that reduces recoil to faster firing guns and apply anything that increases your ergonomics to slower firing guns. And when it comes to any modifications that allow you to add some capacity into your mag, I always make sure to go for that. I could definitely get more granular on it, but that's kind of the basics. Now, speaking of ergonomics, if you are like me and mostly fire in the third-person view, modding your weapon to the iron sights for your scope is a great way to give you a small ergonomic boost because you're not using your first person scope anyways. Next, let's talk about combat. Now, unlike most shooters, reloading does not just simply replenish the empty bullets in your mag. In Helldivers, when you reload, this discards your entire mag. So you really don't want to be wasteful. You mostly want to exhaust your mag before reloading. But if you can manage, leave one bullet in the chamber because this will allow you to reload your magazine just a little bit quicker. Some weapons in this game, mostly support weapons, have a stationary reload pattern, like the heavy machine gun and the recoilless rifle. And a lot of these actually do reload in phases. And that means that if you get interrupted and you've passed a little bit of a checkpoint in that reload, you don't have to start your reload from the beginning. Knowing this can actually allow you to time the different phases of your reload so that you don't get stuck out in the open for too long. Now, every weapon in this game has an armor penetration level, which matches to the enemies who have various levels of armor on different body parts. Typically, these are classified as light, medium, heavy, and anti-tank armor levels, and you can tell that your weapon is effective against enemy weak spots by what kind of hit markers you're getting. If your hit marker is red, it means you are doing full damage and that your weapon has a higher armor penetration level than the enemy you're shooting at. Now, if your hit marker is gray, you're actually doing less damage because you are matching the armor penetration level of your enemy, and so they're doing a little bit of damage reduction there. Now, if you're getting this ricochet mark, that means you ain't doing poop against this enemy. Now, one thing I've discovered is that in looking for the weak spots on the enemies, the devs seem to have a little bit of an obsession with feet or legs, because that's where most enemies have their weak spots. If you shoot the Voteless Horde in the legs, they go down super quickly. You also have Striders and Devastator legs, which are light armor penetrating. The Harvester's feet is one of their medium armor weak spots, and also generally getting bugs in the legs often end up shredding them pretty quickly. You can also strip the armor off of a charger leg, and if you do so, it is super weak. You can end up hitting it with anything. Legs are also one of the heavy armor weak spots on the War Strider. Now, the crotch is often another weak spot that these devs seem to have a little bit of an obsession with, being a medium armor weak spot for the smaller Striders and a heavy armor weak spot for the War Striders. Next, Bile Titans actually have a light armor weak spot on their stomachs, which you can actually kill them from, but it does take a while, so it may not be worth going for. But their stomachs are also where they have their bile sacs, and if you destroy them, it renders them unable to spit their bile at you. They still can chase you though, so just be aware. Stalkers are one of the toughest enemies in this game because they rush you and they often try to sneak up on you. But having the dog breath backpack on can be a game changer for these guys, as it will seek them out for you and damage and distract them without you needing to do anything. Beyond that though, guns that have stagger and stun are really great for these guys, as they will keep them at bay and allow you to do some damage on them from afar. Rocket Devastators can also be brutal on the bot front, shipping rockets straight up your ass. But you can shoot their rockets off their shoulders to unarm them, although usually it's a little bit quicker to just take them out. The Hulks on the bot front have high armor levels from their front, including their eye, which means most of the time you need to get around at their back. But their eye is slightly weaker, allowing for things like the Senator, Eruptor, and the Laser Cannon to take them on and wreck them directly from the front. One way to quickly take down the Rocket Striders is by aiming for their rockets. You can do so with light armor pen and up, and the explosion will just completely knock them out. You do need to have good aim though, and if they use their rockets, you no longer have that weak spot to use. Harvesters are these big tripod enemies with a shield around them that you need to take down before you can do damage to them. Their main weak spots tend to be their medium armor leg joints, but if you don't want them to keep generating that shield, you can actually take down their shield generators, which is located right on the top of their head. If you destroy it, it won't be able to recharge its shield at all. Another important thing is to look out for enemy telegraphs, which signal their attack. Leviathans and Stingrays, for example, light up the ground where they plan to attack. Bile Titans pull back a little bit before spitting bile. Rocket Devastators crouch a bit before releasing rockets. Looking out for these things can be a good way to save your skin. Okay, now every faction actually has a spawn mechanic for calling in their own reinforcements, and each one gives a signal that can be stopped. For bugs, it is the bug breach, where bugs come in from the ground. For bots, this commissar releases a red flare, calling in a dropship to fly in, and for the squids, the watcher releases a blue flare to call in the warp ships. Bug breaches are really harder to stop because any small bug can do it and it transfers easily. For bots, you just need to stop the little guy from running forward and shooting the flare off, which in theory is a little easier. Watchers often travel solo, so knocking them out prevents the warp ships from coming in. If you can't prevent it though, and it's too late, you do still have a few options in order to take these things down quickly. If you're on the bot front, drop ships can be taken down by aiming for their thrusters with an anti-tank weapon. Warp ships can be taken down by first taking down their shields and then hitting their undersides with an anti-tank weapon. It's kind of hard and may not be super realistic to do though. Bug breaches are also pretty hard, but throwing an orbital napalm barrage on top of where the bug breach is occurring is a good way to combat and quash these. Enemies also spawn from bug holes, fabricators, or illuminate warp ships, so destroying these will stop enemies from spawning there. Other enemies chill by various points of interest, and some actually roam the map in patrols, so just be warned. Now next are a series of random and more advanced tips that even veteran Helldivers might not know about. And I actually have a challenge for my veteran Helldivers. If you see a tip in this video that I've missed, comment it down below. That way we can have a complete compendium on this video of tons and tons of tips, and newer players can read the comments below for even more tips. Now my first is that there are actually two different support weapons that you can only find on the map, and you can't actually call them down as stratagems. You have the break action shotgun and the entrenchment tool. The entrenchment tool is for digging up samples that can occasionally spawn underground, and the shotgun is kind of poop, but fun to find. Another cool thing about the entrenchment tool is you can use it to build a trench, and you can actually use this as a little bit of cover in order to fight the enemies. If you have the stun grenade and you throw it near you, when it explodes, it may end up stunning and shocking yourself. But if you throw it and happen to dive just as it is exploding, you will completely negate those effects and be able to move while every enemy around you will still be shocked. The Senator actually has a speed loader, which will allow you to reload faster. Once you've exhausted the mag, you'll be able to speed load all the bullets at once. If you try to reload before you've exhausted it though, it will take longer. Also, if you hold the reload button down with your Senator or your Talon, you'll actually spin it around like a cowboy. Yeehaw! You can actually toss bombs away from you, whether it be your own that you maybe threw too close, one from a bot, or one from an overseer. You can quickly toss it away. If you wear the advanced filtration armor passive, it will grant you 80% resistance to gas damage. But when you combine that with the vitality booster, it adds 20% resistance to you, which means if you have both of these, you will have 100% immunity to gas. You can just live in there. If you have the Democracy Protects armor passive, the 50% chance of not dying is very random, which can lead to you dying consistently for a while, no matter what, but also leads to some epic moments where you just refuse to die. The Medkit armor passive gives you additional stims and stim duration. And one thing to know is that this actually stacks with the experimental infusion booster, making the length of your stim and its protection very long. This also works with the stim pistol stims that you can fire at a teammate. Speaking of stims, something I like to do is what I call a pre-stim. If I know I'm about to take a lot of damage, I will stim ahead of time, because that will not only give me a few seconds of immunity, but also full stamina in order to run away. This is quite helpful when running through enemies or running through a hazard like fire. You can also stim while you're diving, which is a great way to heal up and avoid taking more damage. I also like doing this when I run out of stamina in order to maximize my speed, as you do stop a little bit if you try to stim while standing. Now, the side objectives aren't just there for something to do, they actually do impact some of the gameplay. And one of the most impactful ones is the Siege Artillery side objective, where you need to find the rocket shells and load them in. Now, the colors on these actually mean something. There are different types of ammo that get deployed, and once you are done completing this side objective, you actually have a new stratagem that you can call down, and it will call down an attack wherever you place this with the corresponding ammo that you placed inside. If you see smoke, you might want to steer away from that. If you have the integrated explosive armor passive, this actually detonates your body upon death, which can be used to have some good revenge against the enemies that kill you. But it can actually also be used in some other semi-practical ways. You can run straight into a bug hole in order to close it, as well as even a bot fabricator in order to destroy it. The Adrenodefibrillator armor passive grants you the ability to resuscitate after death and run around for a little while before finally dying. And this is definitely interesting for having a final stand after you know your service to Super Earth has been completed. And this actually does allow you to put the integrated explosive armor passive to shame. All you need is to have a portable hell bomb equipped. If you happen to go down, as soon as you resuscitate, I would spam that toggle button so that you can get some sweet revenge. The fortified armor passive, which gives you resistance to explosive damage, doesn't just apply to your run-of-the-mill explosive. It also applies to plasma explosions, as well as bile spit from things like bile spewers and bile titans, and it also provides protection from the Leviathan and Stingray attacks. Here's a quick one that I wish I knew sooner. Helldivers can't swim. For the terminate illegal broadcast side objective, you don't actually have to use the terminal in order to do this. You can just blow that straight up. Another cool thing is if you dive forward while throwing a stratagem, it will give you a little bit more distance on that throw. And speaking of stratagems, the stratagem keybinds often follow a pattern which can help you memorize it. All Eagle airstrikes, for instance, start with up and right. Most orbitals are right or right down. Support weapons mostly start with down, but so do defensive and backpack stratagems, so those will be a little bit harder to memorize. The key combinations do, though, often appear or look a little bit like what the stratagem does, and that can help you memorize it. For the jump pack, you have a series of ups and downs. For the 500 kg bomb, you see a big downward explosion with the 3 down arrows. And for most shields, you have these arrows facing away from each other. Kind of looks like a shield to me. Now, the Ultimatum Secondary is one of the strongest sidearms in this game, providing immense anti-tank damage. But one of its major downsides is its very short range. But there are 2 really good ways to make this shoot farther. One is if you have the raised weapon emo and fire this, it will send it in a long and very consistent arc pattern pretty far away. The other, probably more practical way to do this is to equip your primary and then quickly swap and fire your ultimatum right after it's equipped. For whatever reason, this ends up sending the ultimatum rocket launching and gives you quite a bit more distance. Now let's talk about the double-edged sickle. It's kind of like a double-edged sword in that while it's very powerful and does a lot of scaling damage, it also does a lot of damage to you and sets you on fire. But there are a good number of ways to reduce that damage, making it more effective. The inflammable armor passive, which grants flame reduction, certainly can help mitigate that damage, as well as combining that with the vitality booster, giving you additional damage reduction. But also, simply going prone and firing will reduce this even further because going prone prevents you from catching fire. And another thing I like to do with this is, like what I mentioned earlier, is pre-stim while using this. Speaking of putting out your fire, if you do catch on fire, all you need to do to put it out is simply dive, and you will immediately be fine. This one might have you labeling me as stupid, but I recently figured this out. When you encounter this little terminal puzzle, often on the ICBM launch missions, you have to navigate the cursor around in order to locate the target on the grid. Now, I always used to just randomly zoom around until I saw that it was ready to target in, but unbeknownst to me, you can actually see in the corner here that it's telling you exactly what grid location to go for, so you don't have to guess at all. You can go straight to it. When facing off against chargers, they have a noticeable weak spot. It's their juicy behinds. But they actually can be stopped from the front even with things that are not anti-tank. They're actually pretty susceptible to stun rounds, especially if you happen to fire at their mouth. Doing so can often stun them with things like the halt shotgun or the pacifier. Most of the time on bug missions, you're gonna see these small bug holes, but there actually are these huge bug nests that actually spawn bile titans. And these can only be destroyed with things that do a lot of demolition force, things like the 500 kg bomb or the ultimatum. But these can also be closed with any random hellpod, because hellpods do have a lot of demolition force. So you can throw a supply box, a support weapon, whatever you want, especially if you don't have anything else in order to take these out. It can save you quite a bit. One cool thing is you can actually reload while using the jump pack, and this even applies to weapons that have long or stationary reload patterns. All you have to do is jump and then start reloading, and it will actually do it while you're in the air in this weird awkward animation for a short bit of time. It's also pretty good for giving you some distance from the enemies, allowing you to finish the rest of the reload once you land. Tesla towers are actually this very strong stratagem that you can call down, and it will emit an electrical damage in a circle around it, taking out a lot of enemies. But one of the biggest downsides of this is that if you get caught near one, it can absolutely wreck you. And sometimes it will even block your path. Now, you can simply destroy these in order to clear the path, but you can also just go prone by these and it won't damage you, at least not most of the time. This also applies to the Tesla towers that the Illuminate have as well. So going prone by these can be a good way to avoid that damage. Speaking of going prone, if you are encountering a bunch of Shriekers, you can also go prone by them. They do not swoop far down enough on the ground to hurt you, so that can be a good way to avoid them, especially if you're getting swarmed. Now, another cool thing is you can find hell bombs scattered around the world. These apparently malfunctioned and didn't trigger appropriately, but they can be triggered if you shoot at it with a bullet of pretty much anything. And so this can be a good way to lead enemies into a bit of a trap. Fire at these when they're nice and close, and it will take a good chunk out of them. Just be sure to get a good distance for yourself. The railgun actually has an unsafe mode, which you can toggle to safe and unsafe. If you do it in the unsafe mode, it allows you to do much more damage the longer you hold down your charge, but if you hold it down for too long, you will blow up yourself and lose your railgun in the process. The same is true with the Epoch support weapon, which adds some nice risk reward with both these weapons. Now, the de-escalator is an arc grenade thrower that shocks and hurts enemies, and it's particularly good on the bot front. One thing I like to do versus the Hulks is shooting this behind them, which allows them to get at their heat sinks from the back and take them out quite quickly. The shield generator pack actually pairs really well with both the HMG emplacement and the anti-tank emplacement because it provides you with a little shield and protective barrier while you're shooting your shots. Now, the next two tips are things that do really well versus Illuminate spaceships that you might not expect to. A single thermite is actually going to be a really effective way to take these down. All you have to do is throw it on, it sticks to them, and it will one-shot them. It's one of the best ways to do so. Gas strikes can also take these down in one shot. You just need to make sure that it's striking close to the center of it, and it will take these ships down pretty nicely. Another thing I didn't expect with gas bombs is that they can actually close bug holes, close bot fabricators, and spaceships, despite seeming like they won't actually be able to. There are these bunkers in this game, which actually typically require 2 people in order to open them, requiring one person to press their hand on either side. These often have some pretty good loot inside, but if you're solo or you don't have a teammate around, you can actually get in without needing a teammate. All you need is the warp pack, which you can use to transport inside the bunker and get everything by yourself. Another cool thing with the warp pack is you can use this to bypass city walls, and you can also use it to land inside an enemy, destroying them. Another thing I didn't know soon enough is that most Eagle stratagems actually deploy in a horizontal pattern based on where you throw it. When I first got this game, I definitely thought it was just random, but it is actually always horizontal to the direction of where you throw it, with the exception of the strafing run, which goes vertical to where you throw it. Knowing this can help you triangulate this better and avoid killing your teammates. Another cool thing is if you are using the anti-tank mines, which are meant for the most elite enemies, you can actually step on these and be totally safe. It has some sort of a pressure weight plate on it, so it's for the heavier enemies. When using sentries, it's recommended to try to place these on a different elevation, preferably lower to help prevent accidentals, especially as these tend to swivel around and you might end up getting caught in the crossfire. Now let's talk about laser weapons. These have infinite ammo as long as you don't overheat it and need to replace the coil. And there's actually a really cool way to manage these so that you are constantly doing damage. If you happen to have multiple lasers equipped, all you need to do is use one until it's almost ready to overheat and then switch to the other, allowing your first weapon to recharge and heating up your second. Often by the time you're ready to switch again, the other one is recharged and ready to go. The Talon sidearm actually has one of the fastest cooldowns of any laser weapon. And what this means is that actually, if you time it right, you can just continually fire this thing forever without stopping. It is a little bit of a slower fire rate though, so might not be practical in close quarters. Now let's talk about fire. Putting fire directly on the enemy is certainly an effective way to take them down, and fire is actually able to penetrate at all armor levels, so it's even able to get things like the Hulks and even the Factory Striders pretty well. But another thing you can do with fire is leave it directly on the ground, because the fire will stay there for a while, and any enemy that walks over it will catch on fire and take damage. This can be an effective way to create little defensive walls in order to protect yourself from the enemies. The ballistic shield, which prevents a lot of direct incoming damage, didn't actually always used to do this, but now it can actually block melee, making this a pretty good option if you are wielding a melee weapon yourself. And making it much more viable on something like the bug front. Now, plasma weapons in this game are very strong. They do explosive damage, but unlike things like the crossbow, they don't close bug holes. One of the cool things about them though is how these explosions actually go through a little bit of armor, allowing you to essentially penetrate armor levels a little bit higher than what is listed. You can shoot things like heavy Devastator shields and damage those guys from behind it, as well as the Striders going directly for their face. These are also really good versus the heat sinks, and you can even kind of fire around the edges of things that have heat sinks in order to get some damage on them. And plasma weapons absolutely wreck charger butts. Another cool thing with the chargers is you can actually shoot underneath the chargers with these plasma weapons, and the explosions actually end up getting at that ass. So it's really effective. Speaking of chargers, if you manage to get on top of one, you can ride them like a cowboy. Yeah, okay, not again. Now, one thing to know is that a lot of the backpack stratagems actually have toggles that have some very important functions. If you have one of the dog stratagems, for example, essentially these buddy drones that stay by your side, you can actually use the toggle to have them stay docked on your back and not fight at all, or toggle them again when you're ready to deploy them. This can be useful because you might not always want to have them expending their ammo, especially if it's just a few stray, easy enemies in the area. You can also monitor the amount of ammo that is on your dog backpack by looking at the HUD to see how much ammo is left in that backpack icon, as well as just looking at the backpack itself to see how many mags are left. The toggle is also going to be good for the supply backpack because while it is nice to donate supplies to your teammates, using that toggle will replenish your own reserves, so that's nice. You can also drop your backpack if you need to. You won't need to do this too often, but if you do want to share it with a teammate, you can drop it to let them have it, or if you want to utilize the portable hell bomb, once you toggle it, you will want to be able to drop that backpack in order to give you the time to run away. Speaking of dropping things, you can actually drop the one true flag, and doing so will plant it, which you can do at various objectives and even salute it. You can also stick these directly into an enemy to show them that liberty has come for them. Both the jump packs and the lift packs are amazing backpack stratagems, not only for allowing you to escape, but also for allowing you to get to higher elevations that you otherwise would not be able to get to. And these are really great for getting you onto ledges or on top of city buildings, and doing so will provide you a good amount of safety because a lot of the enemies just simply can't get there. This is also really great for extractions, being able to stay at a safe elevation and have a good vantage point dropping pot shots on the enemy. The lift hover pack is also great in that if you want to get down from a high elevation, you can actually use it to break your fall if you drop from an elevation. If you toggle it, it will allow you to gently descend. With the lift hover pack, you can also key in stratagems or fire weapons while you're in that hover stage. It's a perfect way to make the most out of your time in the skies. The commando stratagem actually has a guided mode, which allows you to reorient the missiles after you fire them by moving your laser pointer around, directing the missiles to your target. You can toggle this off though if you don't want it. Another thing to note when extracting is getting into the Pelican actually triggers the liftoff. So just be considerate of your teammates. Make sure everyone is ready to go. Speaking of being considerate to your teammates, sometimes you're going to encounter stratagem jammers and ion storms, which prevent anyone in the area from accessing their stratagems. That includes sending in reinforcements. So sometimes if you die, you may just need to be patient, especially if you see static on your stratagems. That means no one's really going to be able to reinforce you. All right, so the Siege Ready Armor passive originally was only meant for primary weapons, but the increased magazine count part of this perk also applies to support weapons and secondary weapons, with the exception of backpack ammo weapons and the ultimatum. Another thing is the engineering kit and fortified armor passives, which state that they reduce recoil when crouched or prone, actually also reduce recoil when standing, despite saying otherwise. First person view, by the way, also reduces your recoil in addition to crouching and going prone. Another thing is most armor passives are also going to be available in the superstore. So if the armor passive is the main thing you want from a given war bond, it may be cheaper to just look in the superstore for that passive. An example is the Jaguar armor, which gives you the very strong peak physique perk, which you can purchase for cheaper than you would if you wanted to buy the Viper Commandos war bond for that perk alone. Also in the superstore, you have some secondary weapons that are only available from them, and It does rotate in and out, so it may not always be available, but the stun baton, the hatchet, and the warrant are all superstore items. But now for perhaps the most important thing I wish I knew sooner about this game, and that is just to not take things too seriously and not worry too much about the meta or even being that good. The vibe of this game is fun, and so accidentally killing teammates or taking out weak weaponry is part of that fun. Even completely failing missions can be fun. This is something that was a little bit tough for me to digest. I had to take some time in order to get used to, especially going out on the harder difficulties, because I was nervous to play with others and have them see how bad I was, or experiment with stratagems and accidentally kill people. That doesn't mean you want to be doing it too often, but don't sweat it too much. And also realize you're only going to get better if you go out there and actually try. So that's what you have to do. Go out there, spread some democracy, and have some fun. All right, so here we have it. Over 100 things that I wish I knew sooner in Helldivers 2. It's certainly not everything. There's actually a lot more to know, but hopefully these help you out. But what did I miss? Let me know in the comments below if you have any additional tips so we can keep this list going. Thank you to my YouTube members for joining the Bowel Movement, and be sure to check out my Helldivers tier lists for a deeper dive into a lot of things available in this game. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.